we'll record the session and then we'll not record the QA. And again, Open Credentialing Initiative, it's an industry initiative for developing open specifications around digital credentials and their use for specific use cases. And obviously the use case we're talking about today is DSCSA, and in particular, PI verification and tracing. We work with a number.
Screen, please?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Could you full screen, please? Having a hard time reading.
Do I have power to do that?
It is full screen. Maybe if
There's OCI magnified.
Are you right?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, we work with a number of other organizations around these the credentials and the use of the credentials. Obviously, it's very important for the industry, the trading partner community, to have a voice in how they work and the workings of them. And in our governance, we do often have areas as we develop credentials or performance criteria around these that we need to work with outside organizations to make sure that they're being useful to the use case that they're associated with. And again, this being DSCSA. And our goal is that the use of these credentials and the openness of the specifications impact the efficiency of using them. Interoperability, of course, is the key in developing open specifications for credentialing and how to use them, and that we've established the right parameters around trust, due diligence, and standardization around the credential specifications. So we're going to take a little bit of time to talk about some of the challenges within DSCSA that credentials address. We'll talk a little bit about what are verifiable digital credentials. There's a lot of, the word credential gets thrown around a lot, and we want to be very specific about what these are. We'll talk about why verifiable digital credentials, and then we'll have our little skit, a little dramatization about using credentials, and hopefully that will help you get a better understanding of what they are, how to use them, and sort of normalize the use of these credentials. So there's two areas I wanted to talk about in terms of DSCSA challenges. Obviously, there's a lot of challenges, and folks have been working on this for quite a number of years. But I do want to focus on the electronic interactions that are required from the DSCSA perspective. And I'll underline that one more time, and I should have put it on the slide, DSCSA electronic interactions. There's certainly a number of interactions that take place face-to-face, on phones, through emails, but we're talking about the EDDS system from an electronic standpoint. So the kind of interactions that are called for within the DSCSA, and then we'll talk about the system itself, the distributed EDDS system, and some of the challenges there. So first of all, typical business transactions take place between two businesses. I mean, that's hopefully not a surprise to anyone. A customer and a supplier, you establish communications between each other, you establish trust and security between each other. In the case of being able to transact electronic information, you establish communication channels between each other. You've pre-authenticated and pre-authorized each other. In other words, you've determined whether you are who you say you are and whether your opposite trading partner is who they say they are. And you've also pre-authorized certain transactions that would be exchanged between yourself. And then you go about your business, and your systems handle those transactions as agreed in your as you've established the relationship. And so that's a typical way we think about trading partners and electronic communication between trading partners. DSCSA is almost unique in the effect that it calls for, in a number of times, PI verification of product information, the keys on the drug itself, and also later for tracing of products. It's unique in that it calls for not only adjacent trading partners, which we see on the left, each of those trading partners having a relationship with each other and established communication paths, but it also, DSCSA also calls for non-adjacent trading partners. So when we read the description within the statute, trading partners are those that are participating in the ecosystem. They're not necessarily those that have already established a relationship. They are all of them. And so we see, especially, the kind of bookends of all of this, the dispenser community, the pharmacies, the hospitals, and the manufacturers. They may not have a trading partner relationship like we see on the left, where there's an established communication path between each other. But in the DSCSA perspective, they do need to be able to communicate electronically and be able to request and respond to product information verifications and also tracings. And so that's rather unique. We now have a situation where we have open communication channels between dynamically authenticated and authorized trading partners. So if you think through, let's just say, we'll just use product information verification as an example. And if you think about this, if you do not have a relationship with the manufacturer that you're trying to verify a product with, your systems are going to need to reach out to the manufacturer systems, make a connection, and then both ends need to authenticate who is this that I've connected to, that I'm asking the question of, or I'm responding to, and are they an authorized trading partner? And so that happens dynamically. And in some cases, it needs to happen very quickly. And so unlike what takes place on the left in a traditional trading partner relationship, where you go through due diligence and you pre-authenticate, you may be doing know your customer, know your supplier processes with your trading partner. In the DSCSA context, this is much more dynamic for certain parties in the supply chain. So in our traditional side, authentication and authorization, electronic authentication and authorization takes place during onboarding and prior to actually transacting information. In the DSCSA context, authentication and authorization takes place dynamically. Of course, with established trading partners, you have those relationships already established, but in a lot of situations, this has to take place dynamically at the time of the transaction. So at the time that you're doing a PI verification, you may be reaching out and asking for that verification to a manufacturer or a repackager that you don't have a relationship with. And so that relationship needs to be established. You both need to be secure in knowing who you're talking to, who you're exchanging information with, and then that can take place. So hopefully that's a little bit of understanding about how DSCSA is a little bit different than we're used to doing business. It's a bit challenging, and it brings us into this dynamic authentication and authorization realm. So let's talk a little bit about the electronic DSCSA Enhanced Drug Distribution Security System. And I emphasize electronic because we know that if you read the statute, there's a lot of talk in the statute, parts in there about systems and processes, and we've had a lot of discussion around what the word system means and what the word process means. And of course, you can prove that you're an authorized trading partner if you're on the phone with someone or through email. There's a number of ways you can do that, but we're limiting our discussion today about an electronic way of doing this. So electronically, you're using a system, you're connecting to a trading partner from a DSCSA point of view, and you're requesting a PI verification, for example, or you're responding to one. So let's take a look at what this looks like. Typically, when we think about systems, we think about a system as a it's much, it's easier to think of them as central solutions where everybody has a username and a password in a central solution, and so anybody in that solution It has already been pre-authorized, authenticated, and so things take place. But we know the DSCSA quote unquote system or network, or however you want to talk about this, is not centralized. It is actually a decentralized systems of systems, sometimes we call this, where there may be solutions that take place and they have a number of trading partners that use those solutions. And so they would talk about themselves as being a network, but they need to interoperate with other networks. In this diagram, you could take a look at the pharmacy or the hospital trying to do a PI verification with a manufacturer or a repackager. Even though that pharmacy and hospital is known to their local network or their local solution, they aren't known in the manufacturer's solution, for example. And so there are no usernames and passwords in a distributed network of systems. And this is where digital verifiable credentials are used instead. It's a way of reaching across networks and being able to cryptographically prove who you are and that you're an ATP. And also, when you receive a response, for that the responder to be able to prove they are that manufacturer or repackager, cryptographically, you can prove today and 6 years from now that that transaction took place with that particular manufacturer and that they were an authorized trading partner at that point in time. So this is where the challenge that occurs from a networking, I guess you'd say, point of view that we're addressing with digital verifiable credentials. So two aspects, two challenges that I point out. Of course, DSCSA, we've got a tremendous amount of challenges, but these are two that are being addressed through digital verifiable credentials. One is non-adjacent trading partners. And the second one is in an interconnected network, much like the internet. I don't know if you've ever seen that cartoon. There's two dogs, and one's at a computer, and the other one's on the floor. And the one at the computer looks down and says, on the internet, no one knows you're a dog. Well, in a highly distributed environment, no one knows actually who you are. You get a message that comes in. It purports to be from a certain company, but these digital credentials help prove that it did come from that company and their ATP authorized trading partner status. So hopefully you have a somewhat idea of what credentials can do and how it could be applied to these two situations. So let's just take a look at what they are. So a verifiable credential, this is a standard from the W3C, which develops standards for the World Wide Web. So everything that we're doing today and transacting, if you're using a browser, you're using W3C standards. And a number of their standards happen to be around digital credentials and the way they can be cryptographically built and shared with others across a very distributed network, such as the World Wide Web, or in our case, these distributed systems that are supporting the DSCSA. A verifiable credential has data inside that is presented to whoever you're either asking a question from, requesting information, or if you're responding to information. A lot of times people talk about this like a driver's license. There's information on a driver's license. You get a driver's license, then you'd walk away, and then you use your driver's license. And the entity that provided that driver's license isn't involved in those other interactions. But there's a lot of cryptographic and signing around the credential and the use of the credential. And so in use and in the DSCSA EDDS system, we can tell a lot about the party that has presented that, and also how that credential and how the message that's associated with it has been treated as it's made its way through those networks and to us. So we can tell, has the credential been issued by a trusted issuer? And has that issuer, we could also tell, has that issuer met their conformance criteria to the specifications. We can tell whether that credential has been tampered with. We can tell whether the credential is still in effect. In other words, has it been revoked? Has it been expired? We can tell whether this is the correct trading partner, who this trading partner is. Did they have are they an authorized trading partner? And also through the use of the credential, we can tell whether the trading partner meant to provide that credential at that point in time. So we can prevent reuse of others' credentials. And so we rely on W3C standards to help us architect the credentials. And then through the Open Credentialing Initiative, we develop open specifications around the use of those credentials for DSCSA, for the application at hand. So hopefully you've started to get a sense of why these digital credentials are interesting to think through and how they could be applied to this particular situation. But again, and I'll just come back to, in general terms, I know that we could get into a discussion and someone can tell me that this is not technically true, but if you think about this again, interoperable system of systems, interconnectivity throughout the whole supply chain. If we think about hundreds and hundreds of manufacturers, hundreds and thousands of wholesalers and distributors, and then tens of thousands of pharmacies and hospitals in the U.S. A lot of connections, a lot of connections that will need to be made dynamically as you use the systems that you take on as to support you in DSCSA. So these credentials are a lot like usernames and passwords, and they present to the other party information that's verifiable, that's auditable, and that they can archive and as part of their record set for what is taking place, the kind of information that they're exchanging with. If it's an investigation goes on, it could be part of that record set also. It could be verified 6 years later if there is an investigation about the information. And so the credentials are very helpful in this kind of highly distributed EDDS system. If we think about what happens without credentials, so let's just say, let's not use credentials. Let's just let these PI verifications and tracings fly through the system. And of course, we know that those of you who are on the call, you're legitimate trading partners, you're legitimate solution providers, and it's not you that we're trying to prevent to be working in these electronic environments as well as the supply chain. But it's others that may be more nefarious in nature. But if we consider a dispenser that's trying to do a product information verification, let's say they've got a bottle of something, it looks off, and they want to just do a product verification. So we have mechanisms and we have systems for doing that, and that request can be presented to the manufacturer or repackager. But then what do? They get this request, it's purported to be from you, but again, this enters into an archive, a record set for an investigation, and so they need to be cautious about who they present information to. And so that triggers then possibly a manual onboarding process where the two of you will go back and forth and determine whether you are who you say they are, and it could turn into an onboarding situation. And that's fine, but if you remember how many entities are in the supply chain, that can be very time consuming. And then the product verification can come back to you, and you can know that came from the legitimate manufacturer or repackager. So it's this manual process here that we're trying to address in a highly distributed system where trading partners need to reach each other and those other trading partners that participate in the supply chain, but you may not have a current relationship with. And so with the credentials, and again, I've oversimplified this, of course, there's a lot going on here in these credential checks. There's a lot of checks that can be made on the credentials, as I alluded to before. the status of the credential, whether it's been tampered with, whether it was issued by a trusted issuer. All those things are checked and very quickly. In matter of fact, in PI verification today through the VRS system the goal is to keep it under a second response time. And so now credential checking needs to fit within that time period. So these things happen very quickly. As you'll see in our little dramatization, we'll stretch it out a bit. The dramatization will take place longer than a second, but again, to the analogy of the iPhone, there's a lot going on under the covers. So you have these two situations, and it's anybody's guess in 2023 how many verifications will take place, how many tracings may take place. But the credentials are seen as a way of securing and providing auditable and archivable information about who you're interacting with in this, again, highly distributed network. Some of our goals around developing the application and the specifications, again, bridging from the W3C standards around verifiable credentials and others to actually using them within the DSCSA and providing solutions and means to interoperate with together. These are the kind of goals that we are hitting. The credentials through the specifications and through the standards, they are interoperable. We have the open specifications to allow solutions to adopt the same schemas and APIs and all of that. There's assurance through the conformance criteria that OCI runs that the issuers, the digital wallets that you'll hear about in a moment, and the VRS providers are trusted in this ecosystem. Again, I've mentioned around cryptographic features such as signatures and things like that take place that provide a level of security around the credential and trustworthiness of that credential and its use within this ecosystem. Confidentiality. So one of the things that is, we hear about this all the time. You have logins in a number of places, and you notice that when you talk about a certain subject, all of a sudden it shows up in your Facebook app or it shows up somewhere else. That's called correlation. And what we wanted to prevent here was anyone mitigating against unauthorized business intelligence gathering. So if you think about the issuer, we trust the issuer. They've gone through audits. They are conformant to the specifications, but they have no business understanding what you're transacting with your trading partner. And so we've designed into the use of the credentials this sort of separation of duties. So the issuer is not involved with your transactions. They issue you a credential, and you, through your solutions, use those credentials as you see fit. And the issuer is none the wiser. However, the issuer needs to be doing their own checking, periodic checking against the proofs that you provided that issuer to ensure that the credential should still be in play. Another area that we try to, our goal was around was choice in developing these standards and specification as open standards. We allow competing solutions to interoperate. Anyone can come to the OCI website, download our open specifications for how to be an issuer, how to interoperate as an issuer, how to interoperate as a wallet, how to interoperate in other areas. But the point there is that they will interoperate. And so that's what we're trying to work out, is that they're open, they're free to use for folks and solutions, but it causes interoperability, and it causes some choice in the landscape. Convenience. You may have heard of credentials and you heard how hard it is to get one and all this stuff, but I kind of think about credentialing, getting credentialed as a lot like whether you get an important document notarized. There's a few steps you go through. You need to prove who you are. You need to prove that this is something that you're doing that's legitimate. But then after the notary stamps the document, you're off and doing your business, and it becomes convenient at that point in actually transacting and using them. And lastly, economical. You saw the two processes, that kind of manual, know your customer, know your supplier, onboarding, versus once you have a credential, you're able to present that, and the other party is able to cryptographically check that and make sure that they are secure in knowing who you are and that you have this ATP status. Okay, that was a lot of talk. Let's see, where are we in our discussion here? 11:54, and maybe before we get into, let's do our little play. We've got a number of folks that have been part of this initiative, and we'd like to now kind of play out what does it look like. So a day in the life of someone who wants to get a credential and use a credential. Again, putting away a lot of the technology and a lot of the work, a lot of great work that's been done in developing the specifications and everything around it. So I'm going to ask our actors to turn on their cameras. And what you're going to see here, we're going to have a little bit of a discussion with Max Peoples first to talk about PI verification today. And then we'll go into Act 2, which is, so how do I get a credential? What's the process? What am I going to experience in this? Is this going to be difficult or not? And then Act 3 will be, actually, now I have a credential, great. What do I do with it? How do I use it? And we'll use PI verification as the subject area for that. Okay, so here's our players, all brave people that volunteered for this, and we went through 1 or 2 sessions, but this is still very fresh for all of us. So, we'll hand out the Academy Awards after we go through this. But we do have, you'll see as we go through the actual playing of this, we have a manufacturer's verification routing system. That will be Brittany Santiago from Systech will be playing that role. We have our dispenser's verification routing system, Mark Blanken from Mobilitas will be playing that role. Chris, who's been, you've heard her already on the sessions this morning from Sparity, will be our manufacturer. Max will come back as his role as the dispenser. Dave Kessler from Legisim will be our issuer today, and then we've got 2 digital wallet solutions that will be working with us today. From the dispenser's point of view, the dispenser's wallet, Alex Colgan from XATP, and the manufacturer's wallet will be George Jurgens from Sparity. So you'll see us all. Alex has created little icons for us all. And
no, credit for those goes to my daughter. She made them. I'm not that savvy.
There you go. Okay, good. So let's just talk first. Let's talk first to Max. Max, before we get into the world of 2023 today, and again, without credentials, can you just kind of give a little bit of your thoughts or your feelings around this?
Sure. So when I have my pharmacist shoes on, if I'm in the pharmacy, I've got a patient who's just come in, needs a medication. Let's say I go and grab a couple bottles off the shelf to fill a prescription. And as doing so, I notice that they don't look exactly the same. Not so obvious that it wasn't picked up maybe when we received them. I pop one of the lids and it looks like, well, that seal looks different than the one on the other container. And I look closer at the label and I go, well, these labels are kind of close, but not so close exactly, right? So now I have, in essence, a suspect product, and I want to follow the process. So I really need to reach out to a manufacturer to identify, hey, did you make this product? If I give them the NDC number, the lot number, the expiration date, and serial number, in other words, I'm doing a verification process, right? I need to contact them. Well, right now there's no electronic system, where I could like scan that 2D barcode and magically it would go off and interrogate and talk to the computer of the manufacturer, and they would say yes or no, so forth. Has been kind of described what you laid out here a little bit ago. So now I would go online. I would get out to the manufacturer's website. I would be looking for a contact email or phone number, preferably phone number in this scenario, right? Because I got a patient here. I'm going to have to call. Hopefully it's not going to take too many, dials to the right number or, transfer overs to get to the right person. And then I'm going to be able to describe what the scenario is. Hopefully they're set up to give me a response back. I'm betting right now I've already killed a lot of time. I've got patients waiting. I've got this particular patient waiting. So it's not a very time efficient or staff efficient process right now. That's kind of the state of today. If I was in one of my pharmacies and this problem popped up.
Thanks, Matt. That's helpful in understanding, putting your feet into the pharmacist's shoes, and you've got a lot to do. And not a lot of that always has to be around DSCSA, but being assured that your communications with the manufacturer are going through, where to go through, and then also knowing that they know, they can tell who you are, so they're not going to go off and start a process on us before we get off the phone and get back to work.
Yeah. Well, and obviously there's a concern on their part. Are they getting numbers? Are they getting questions about somebody who's trying to come up with, are these good serial numbers, lot number combinations and stuff? So there's a work on their side to know that I am who I say that I am. If I'm calling from Uptown Pharmacy, how do they know that? So they're going to have to do their due diligence before they're going to be able to give me that information.
Yeah, that's interesting, because there is a lot of there's a lot of interesting information in TI data and verification data that, off the top of your head, it doesn't look that interesting or valuable, but you start to put enough of it together, and you can start to draw conclusions on what's going on in the supply chain. Like, when are trucks leaving? Where are things going? Who has some interesting stuff that maybe I want? So we really do need to take precautions around who we're exchanging information with. So with that, I know everybody's all excited and get ready to go with their lines. So let's take a look at going through the process. And so we've got a lot of folks here volunteered, and they're probably regretting this, but we're going to first discuss, or we'll just walk through what happens. You're a dispenser. You have a verification routing system, and you also have you'll get a digital wallet to handle your credentials, but you need to get one, and so you need to have a conversation with an issuer. So let's play out around this. And so I'm going to turn my camera off because I think I'm just distracting here. But hopefully you have a sense of the DSCSA challenge and what credentials are. So now we'll experience the process of acquiring and using your credentials. So in this scene, we've got the dispenser who works with the credential issuer to attain their credential. And again, as I said before, this process, hopefully you get the sense that this is pretty similar to getting an important document notarized. So we'll first start with the dispenser. That's back to Max.
So what I have to do is, fortunately, I have a solution, a third-party solution that I'm able to utilize. So I'll go into that solution, and there's a apply for credential component of it. So I'm able to just go into that apply for credential, answer a couple of questions. I hit a button, and it sends off a credential application request to the system. That system sends me an email message back to confirm that I actually do want to apply for that credential. I reply to that. That takes me to a website. I now fill out some more information, some basic information I should have around that they are going to need to know that, hey, I am who I say I am, so that I can apply for and get this credential. that's going to be, in essence, stored for my system to use to make these electronic communications over to manufacturers and so forth. So I've gone in, just answered a couple of questions, hit apply. I wait. A few minutes later, I get an email to actually, prove that I did make that application. I click on the link in there. It takes me to a website. I fill out some information and I hit the apply button there, in essence, and the system takes over. So I'll let it off there for the other folks to talk about what they're doing.
Okay, so Max is essentially going to, his first contact is as a dispenser. He is using a VRS system, and so he probably has this conversation with the VRS system. So let's hear from the VRS, Max's VRS.
Okay. Well, Max, you know that we have spoken about the credentials that we can provide to you with our solution. It's a very simple process, and if you want, I can arrange a call with the issuer of the credentials if you're interested in that.
Yes, if they need to reach out to me to get any proof of the information, please have them do so.
So a short while later, David, the issuer.
Hi, dispenser. Thanks for joining us on the call today. This should be a painless process, but we want to make sure we do it correctly.
I guess I'm supposed to pick up there. I'm not looking at the script. So thank you for calling. Thank you for calling. And what information do you need so that you can do your part of this?
Okay, so this is going to be a lot like getting important papers notarized, and afterwards, everything will be handled by your VRS solution and your digital wallet, which is where your credentials will be stored, protected, and managed. Let's get started. Have you ever placed an electronic controlled substance order, or a CSAUS order, with your wholesaler? Basically, do you have a DEA signing certificate? If so, using your signing authority, we can automatically complete this step.
So I don't have one, is my response.
Okay, yeah, that's no problem at all. There are other methods that we can do the same thing with. If you had a signing certificate, we could use it to complete everything right now, but perhaps you have some corporate documentation available.
Yes, I definitely have that. Taxman likes me
Excellent.
real well because I have that corporate documentation.
Perfect, that's great. Let me verify them and then we'll get back to you with your ATP status as well.
Thanks.
So the issuer now has Max's copies of Max's documents, and the issuer has processes to go and check those documents. It does the checks on the documentation the dispenser provided, along with looking up their status of their license that the dispenser provided. So a short while later.
Okay, well, it looks like all your documents checked out. I'm going to go ahead and issue your identity credential that you can use to establish the ATP status with me or with another issuer that does it. Since you want to go ahead and move forward with both credentials now, I just want to let you know that I've checked the license information that you provided and have verified your ATP status. So now I'm issuing an ATP credential. You should see both these credentials in your digital wallet momentarily, and your VRS provider will be able to use them for verifications and tracing.
So the issuer now, having verified all of that, allows their digital wallet to transfer the dispenser's credentials to the dispenser's digital wallet, where the dispenser can control the use of those new credentials. Meanwhile, back to the issuer's and dispenser's conversation.
So I can now see that wallet, that credential, and so forth. Is there anything else I need?
Nope, you're all set. Your VRS provider will be able to use them on your behalf. We will review these credentials on an ongoing basis and contact you if there's ever any concerns.
Okay, so just to confirm now, I can use this electronic process. I no longer have to do this big manual process every time I want to do a like a product identity verification. It's all electronic, and I just saved myself a ton of time for both myself and my staff.
Yep, absolutely right, for sure. Now your VRS provider and your digital wallet will also be able to verify the credentials of any manufacturer that you verify with to make sure they are who they say they are. They'll both be able to keep audit records of every time your credential is used in case you need to check this. So thanks for your time today.
And
Thank you.
as
I
the wallet,
appreciate you
as the
making that
wallet, I'm
step.
happy to accept the credential, and I'm holding on to it when you need it.
Good. Good. So now Max, the pharmacist, has his digital credential. He's all set. Let's take a look at now. What do we do with this thing? So we'll now expand our little scenario to include not only the dispenser, so that you see that the issuer goes away. Issuer's done its job and will continue to do their job, but they're not part of your business in interacting with trading partners. So we're looking at the dispenser on the left and the manufacturer on the right. They have VRS systems that communicate and can provide request and response for verification. And they also have their own wallets with their credentials that are ready to work with their VRS systems. So let's see what happens next time the dispenser verifies a product. Let's go to.
Yeah, so now I start out, and I've got this product that doesn't look right. I want to verify it. Now I've got this credential that's going to make the process faster, so I reach out to my verification routing provider and say to them, I'd like to verify this product.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll get right on it.
So next, the dispenser's VRS works with the dispenser's wallet to securely use that ATP credential in the PI verification process.
I need to have the ATP credential for a PI verification.
All right, here's a signed and secured credential presentation.
I got it. Thanks a lot.
So now the dispenser's VRS has this signed verifiable credential that's been signed for this particular use. The signature allows it to be used in this interaction. The dispenser's VRS can now communicate with the manufacturer's VRS to do a verification.
Well, I got here a dispenser's verification request and a signed ATP credential.
Thanks, I got it.
So the manufacturer's VRS will first work with the manufacturer's wallet to check that the PI verification request came from the dispenser and that the dispenser is an authorized trading partner.
Here's a credential I received. Please verify it.
Yeah, thank you. I need to run a couple of checks on that. It will not take more than 1 second, I promise. So I see that the credential is from the credential presentation is from Max. That's good. The credential presentation hasn't timed out. I also see the dispenser's signature. It's from Max. That looks good. The issuer signature is on it from David. I checked the revocation register. Yeah, it's not revoked. It has not been tampered. And let me archive this for any future audit. And yeah, credential looks overall good and everything is checked.
Great, thank you.
So now the manufacturer's VRS now verifiably knows who sent the request and that they are an authorized trading partner at this point in time. So the manufacturer's VRS processes the PI verification request.
I'm checking that the product ID is legit. I'm creating the response, and I'm ready to send the response.
So now we see the process in the reverse point of view. The manufacturer's VRS system is ready to go send the response to Max. But first, the manufacturer's VRS, just like the dispenser's VRS, needs to include the manufacturer's ATP credential with that response so that the dispenser system can verifiably know that the response came from the manufacturer that they were seeking and that the manufacturer is an authorized trading partner. So the manufacturer's VRS now will work with the manufacturer's wallet to accomplish this.
I'm preparing a verification response for ATP2. Can you please send me their ATP credential?
Here's your ATP credential. I've signed it with your signature and secured it, and here's the presentation. It's good to go.
Great, thank you.
So now the manufacturer's VRS can now send the response and the ATP credential to the waiting dispenser's VRS.
Here's the manufacturer's response to dispenser's request and manufacturer's signed ATP credential.
Perfect. Got it.
So before accepting a response, now on the other side, the dispenser side, their systems, before actually accepting that response, the dispenser VRS will work with the dispenser's wallet to check that the manufacturer's ATP credential and ensure that the response came from the legitimate manufacturer, and also that the manufacturer has ATP status.
I received these credentials. Can you please verify them for me?
You got it. Just hang on. This is going to take only a second. So, has the use of the credential timed out? No. The ATP signature looks good. Issuer signature looks good. The credential is not revoked. Nobody's tampered with the credential contents. I'm going to archive the credential check data. Everything looks good with this credential. Good to go.
Thanks a lot.
So having had the credential verified and doing their own checks on the response itself, the dispenser's VRS presents the response to the dispenser.
Here's the manufacturer's response to your verification request. Product ID is verified and the manufacturer's credentials have been checked. I've archived this interaction in case you need to refer to it later.
Well, thank you very much. That was very quick. Saved me and my staff a ton of time. I'm actually going to get to have a bite of lunch today because of the time that you saved me. Thank you.
So how did this happen so fast?
Well, that's because the feature has arrived already. I set my system up to handle the inquiry fully hands-off. So we're now able to interact safely in this distributed network we call the DSCSA Enhanced Drug Distribution Security Network.
Very good. So a couple of things you probably have you saw through that little play there. First of all, we've got some very polite software, and VRS systems, wallets, all very polite, good handshakes, cooperative, and we've got some good actors on the line. So that was our dramatization. Hopefully you got a sense of how it works. So it's not doesn't sound very difficult, hopefully, and you understand that the technology is handling all the details and that it is trustworthy.